In this presentation, we'll take a look at some of the basics of HTML. Let's begin. As you might recall, HTML is the hypertext markup language. The definition you see here, a standardized system for tagging text files to achieve font, color, graphic, and hyperlink effects on World Wide Web pages, pretty much sums up the purpose of HTML. The idea with HTML is to be able to describe how a document should be displayed on the screen, as well as what components the user should see. This includes markup codes for each which represent an HTML element, usually in tag pairs, which represents both the beginning and ending of the element. On the right, you see a graphic with a simple HTML page. Notice that you have less than and greater than symbols surrounding a tag, such as HTML, title, and body. Each of these tags are considered an element in HTML. When you see, for example, the element title, and then the word HTML, and then another tag with the word title in it, you notice that you have a forward slash before the word title. This indicates the end of the element. Title with the less than and greater than symbols around it represents the beginning of the element, and title with a forward slash before it, also surrounded by less than and greater than symbols, represents the end of the element. These two tags taken together are considered to be a tag pair. HTML files normally have a .html extension. Sometimes, though, you will see a .htm extension, especially on Windows. These are simple text files. They can be edited, for example, in something like Windows Notepad. They contain HTML tags, which are then interpreted by a web browser and translated into the pictures, the text, the colors, the fonts that you see in something like Mozilla Firefox or Microsoft Edge or Google Chrome. Here's an example HTML5 document. Again, it's a simple text file, but this is the basic structure you see in these type of documents. The first line indicates the document type. For what we're doing in this class, pretty much it'll always be this, doc type of HTML. You then have an HTML element with a beginning tag and an ending tag at the very bottom, indicating that this is in fact an HTML document. HTML documents are broken into sections, and here you see the head section first in purple. This is information that helps to describe the HTML document. Right now, within the head section, you see a title element. This specifies the text that the user would see at the top of the browser window when they would view this page. You also see a body section. This is the main content that you see in the browser window. Within the body section, you see two other elements, H1 and P. H1 is for heading 1. It shows the word sample web page with bold text in a slightly enlarged font. P is for paragraph. It will show the text between the beginning and ending tags, sample text appears in the page, as simple text formatted as a paragraph. Note here in this example how every tag has a matching end tag. Head, body, and HTML all have corresponding end tags, which are the same except for the forward slash before the tag name. We mentioned the title as one of the head section items. This is the title of the document that displays in the browser title bar. Another head section item that we're going to run across is meta. This includes metadata about the document. It's not something you're going to see on the screen per se, but it's information that the browser uses and that can be used by search engines to help classify the page. Examples of how to use the meta tag are shown here. We also mentioned the heading and the paragraph tags. The example we looked at had an H1, which is the largest heading. However, you can also do other size headings such as H2, H3, and so on down through H6. These specify text that can be used as titles with bold, large type. But keep in mind that H1 will show it in the largest font, while H6 will show it in the smallest font. The P tag we mentioned means paragraph, and it denotes a paragraph of content. In many ways, it acts as a grouping mechanism. As we get into more complex pages, this will become more apparent. Some other formatting that's common within paragraphs involves bolding items or making them italics. There's a few different tags you could use here. For example, for bold, you have a B tag or a strong tag. Anymore, strong is considered to be the way to go, but B, which has been around for quite a long time, is still heavily used. It helps to indicate that a piece of text should be placed in bold when it's displayed in the browser. The I tag, or the EM for emphasis tag, is used to italicize text. And again, just like as with bold, the I tag is older but still heavily used, but the EM tag is really the way to go moving forward. One thing you may have heard about, depending on your background, is how you document your HTML pages. There's something called comments which we can add to our pages. These are little notes to ourselves or to whomever reads our HTML code to indicate what it is we were trying to do or what the purpose of some of the things that are in the page is for. The way we indicate a comment is by starting with the symbols you see here on the screen, the less than symbol, an exclamation point, and 2 dashes. That represents the beginning of a comment. This is something that will be ignored by the browser. It's simply documentation for the page. So again, something for whoever's reading the page code. You end the comment with 2 dashes and a greater than symbol. We'll use them at times within our course here, and it's good practice to add them for very complex types of code. Here's another example of that basic HTML5 shell that we talked about before. Notice here, as we mentioned, an HTML document begins with the doctype tag and then followed by an HTML element with a beginning tag and an end tag. And within that, you have at a minimum a head section and a body section. You're going to use this basic shell to do one of your assignments this week and many of the assignments moving forward. Some additional tags and special characters that you may run across or have a need to use include the BR tag. Now this is a little different than many of the tags we just saw in that it's a single tag and it indicates a line break. You can think of this as kind of like hitting enter on the keyboard. It moves to the next line. Specifically, it moves your content to the next line. Notice here it's a single tag with the word or with the text BR followed by a /. Very often in our content we want to quote something. We can use a block quote tag to indent a block of text to make it stand out as a quote. I encourage you to play around with this a little bit when you do this week's assignment. Now besides just text, some special characters that you can place in your HTML file include these 4 listed here. One which forces a space, one which allows you to show the less than symbol, another which allows you to show the greater than symbol, and another which allows you to see the ampersand. You won't have a great need for these, but you will have a need on occasion for them, and I encourage you to play with them. Another item you often see on web pages are lists. Now lists can be ordered or unordered. For example, an unordered list, which we see the HTML code for here, is what you might call a bullet list. You see the code starting with the tag UL, and you see the list as it would appear in a web page below it. Notice it's just the words Chargers, Raiders, Broncos, and Chiefs as a bullet list. But take note of the HTML code used to produce that. You have a UL element, and within the UL element, you have a LI element for list item. An ordered list is very similar. You just simply swap out a UL element for an OL element. An ordered list you can think of as a numbered list. Now there are ways to customize this a bit, but in general, by default, it is a numbered list. Take note of the code here used to produce the list that you see at the bottom. Here are some other formatting tools or tags that you have available in HTML. We mentioned things like bold, emphasis or EM, italic, but there are also things here like mark, small, strong, sub for subscript, and sup for superscript. These are tags that you can use to add special effects to your HTML code. And again, I encourage you to play with them a bit to see how they work. There are many examples in the textbook you can try, and it never hurts to experiment with your own. Another common thing we see on web pages are hyperlinks. Now, to use hyperlinks, which are links that you can click on and go to a new page, we use something called an anchor tag. Now, one reason it's called an anchor tag is because it's a single letter, A, and A for anchor. But it allows us to associate text with a URL, and it makes it stand out on the web page by adding some color and usually underlining them. Now, example is shown here for Penn State. The A tag has within it something called an attribute called href. It's just something we can customize about the tag. Href allows you to specify the URL that will be launched if the user clicks on the text between the A tag and the ending A tag. In this case, they'll see the words Penn State on the screen, it'll be highlighted, it'll be underlined, and if the user clicks on it, it will go to www.psu.edu. There are some other attributes that you can mess with in terms of the anchor tag. One of them is called target and allows you to specify how the new web page will be launched. By specifying an underscore blank for the target, it will open the new page in a new web browser or a new tab depending on which particular browser you're using. You can also change the href to use something other than HTTP. For example, if you say mail to followed by a colon followed by an email address, it will launch the mail client installed on that computer and allow you, for example, to email someone at stonej@psu.edu. Final element we want to take a look at today is the div element. This is something we're going to explore more in the future, but it's a structural block area on a web page with just empty space above and below. Really, it's a grouping in some ways a grouping mechanism, but in other ways it's a way of formatting a set of content separate from the rest of the page. It can contain just about any other display element, including other divs, but it's going to be most helpful when we look at CSS. Now, one of your chapter readings for this week involves looking at CSS. We're going to explore it a bit more here next week. Now, for your assignment this week, if you read the directions on Canvas, one of the things you're going to be doing is using something called the Path Explorer. The URL of the Path Explorer is listed here. You're going to want to bookmark this site because you're going to be using it heavily throughout the course. This is kind of like a file manager for your website on www.personal.psu.edu. It will allow you to upload files, create folders, and do pretty much anything you want with your website. You should definitely go to this site, log in, and just check it out. The directions will talk about exactly how you're going to use it. That's all for this presentation. Next time we will talk about CSS.